XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd. The MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile all-round shotgun microphones on the market.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd. The MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile all-round shotgun microphones on the market.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
Welcome to ProAV Live. So this is a slightly different stream from normal. There's no guest joining me. There's no big new product to talk about. In fact, there's very little concrete for me to talk about at all. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking from my end. What this is this is a little bit of an experiment on our side of things, and it's never going to attract big viewers. There's 26 people watching this right now across different platforms. The idea of this is that this is for you, not for us. This is not for us to talk about something to you. It's for you to ask us what you want us to talk about. So very, very keen for this to be, I don't want to call it a Q&A. I don't want it to just be one-sided question, answer. I want this to be a discussion. So please, please, please join in the live chat. I mean, there's only 26 of you watching, so please do join in on the chat in Facebook, in YouTube, and we can talk backwards and forwards a little bit. I can see that Tom from Solo 16 is watching. Hello, Tom, who's got a delivery from us coming today. Absolutely. And Copper Wheat Films is asking about the A7S Mark III, which we'll get onto very shortly. So to kick us off, I thought we would sum up a little bit what the last month has been like here at ProAV and for the camera and sort of broadcast video industry as a whole, because it's really been a really interesting couple of months. I mean, on one hand, you've got the world starting to get going again after the COVID-19 pandemic, and work is starting to happen. All of our customers are starting to actually get a decent amount of work coming back in, because of course that's hugely important, because that's how you will pay for the equipment that you're buying from us. And so, you know, in terms of our business and our workload, you guys being busier means that we are busier. So the last couple of months has been very, very interesting from that side of things. But then on the flip side of that, I think we've had more new product launches in the last 2 months. I think it's been the busiest 2 months I've had in my career so far. It's been absolutely crazy. Liam says hi from the guys in the other room. That's the sales team chiming in. Help us answer some questions, Liam. I think the new product launches has been absolutely crazy. I mean, if we just look at the front page of ProAV right now, so we've got the S5 banner there. There we go. S5's huge new launch for mirrorless. We've got the Bolt 4K LT, Teradek completely replacing their Bolt lineup. Brand new CF Express cards from Angelbird, first big brand to take on CF Express other than SanDisk and all the rest of it. The A7S Mark III is probably the most exciting camera right now. Then there's the R5, probably the most exciting stills camera right now. The 12K pushing resolutions beyond anything we've seen before from Blackmagic. And of course the C300 Mark III, which is probably the most sensible broadcast camera we've seen from Canon recently. It is a really cracking camera, the C300 Mark III. I am a big fan of that. So yeah, there's been a huge amount of not just new products. It's not just the volume of new products. It's been how exciting each one of those little new products has been. I mean, the A7S III, for example, has pushed the boundaries forward for what we'd expect from a mirrorless camera massively. And we've been waiting for that camera for how many years now? And the R5, you know, that is the first full-frame 4K mirrorless camera from Canon. How long have we been waiting for a full-frame 4K mirrorless camera? Absolutely huge launches recently. So yeah, it's been a really interesting couple of months. So make sure you guys leave in the comment section there what you think of all those new cameras. The Blackmagic 12K, which is incredibly interesting. There's a lot to talk about with that camera. They're really doing things very, very differently from other manufacturers. And the new mirrorless cameras, the R5, the A7S Mark III. Let me know what you all think. On that subject, Copper Wheat Films is asking about the A7S Mark III. How's shipping looking for the camera if you've only just pre-ordered? So in terms of general shipping for the Sony, I think we're expecting our first batch within the next couple of weeks. So it's looking really positive, actually, for that. How big that batch is going to be, we don't know. We think it'll be reasonably sizable. We don't think there's anything to worry about there in terms of we're only going to get little trickles, which we do see sometimes. We think it's going to be a normal, decent shipment. It almost certainly won't cover pre-orders though. So if you're just pre-ordering now, who knows? Because the thing is, you get that first shipment, which will fulfill a bunch of pre-orders, but then it's very hard sometimes to tell how long it's going to be before the second one. The best thing I would say to there is, rather than just pre-ordering online or something like that, actually pick up the phone and talk to the sales team and ask them. They'll have a much more up-to-date knowledge than what we can put on web, because of course this is what they do all day, every single day. James is asking, any words if Sony will give us a new viewfinder for the FX9? A new viewfinder. So the FX9 is effectively the same as the FS7 in terms of viewfinders. They ship it with a loop. So do you mean, James, a new viewfinder is in, like you've seen for the F55 and the F5, is in a proper viewfinder which has got an actual panel built into it as a viewfinder, so you can't flip it up, it's not a loop or anything like that? Or do you mean a redesigned loop sort of viewfinder attachment that we've seen on the FX9 currently and the FS7 before it? I haven't heard of anything new coming from Sony for either of those. I mean, the viewfinder on the FX9 was improved massively over the FS7 one before it. It's much sturdier. It's much easier to flip it up and take on and off. They improved it a lot with the FS7 Mark II. They've improved it even more on the FX9. I think they've already done that step. I don't think they've got anything new up their sleeves for that. I would love, though, to see a more affordable viewfinder from Sony, or from any of the big brands, to be honest. A proper viewfinder, rather than just a loop that magnifies a screen where you can see more of the pixels, things like that, is so important when you're working in anything that is unpredictable. So varying lights, especially outside in bright sunlight, it's not just that you're able to see the screen clearer, like on a high bright monitor, for example. It's that it shuts it off. It shuts the entire rest of the world off. So no matter whether you're looking into that viewfinder in this room right now, to a sort of fairly darkly lit studio, whether you're in the middle of the Siberian deserts, or whether you're outside here in Hemel Hempstead, it will always look exactly the same through that viewfinder, because it's the same viewing environment. The exterior world has got nothing to do with it at all. So it is so important having that for the memory, the exposure memory, if you like, of a camera operator. That viewfinder is such an important piece. And we've seen some great, more affordable ones. There's the Sakuto Gratical, for example, that sort of lineup. And then there's ones specific for brands. So like Kinefinity have got a really nice one. Blackmagic's one is really nice. We've just seen one from Zcam, for example. But I would love to see the more established camera brands like Canon, Sony, Panasonic releasing something for their middle ground cameras rather than just their high-end ones, because all of those companies have got fantastic viewfinders, but they all cost like $6,000 or $7,000, and they are amazing. They are well worth the money, but that is just so far out of the price league for a lot of customers. Bringing it down to the sort of $1,000 to $2,000 mark for a more average viewfinder, if you like, would be really, really beneficial for a lot of people, and I would love to see that. But no, so saying more like the Arri viewfinder with a touchscreen on the side. Yes, that would be absolutely brilliant. I don't think they'd go like the Arri viewfinder with it, because they've already got their bigger ones. So they'd either replace their bigger, more expensive ones, which would be like the Arri one, or they'd introduce one below it, like I'm describing. Both I'd be very, very welcome. And viewfinders are kind to your aging eye, says Lawrence. Yeah, absolutely. If you wear glasses at all, anything like that, most viewfinders have got diopters built into them. And so they are really, really useful for everyone. No, absolutely everyone. Okay, Alexander I've missed one from JDM. Greetings from Japan. I know that camcorders aren't sexy in inverted commas anymore, but do you think there's any hope for an XF400 Mark II or anything like that? Do people buy and rent them anymore? Absolutely. We sell more camcorders than you would think. I agree with you that they're not sexy anymore. That doesn't mean that they're not practical. So for a bunch of customers, The convenience and the practicality and the ability to always get the shot no matter what happens, to be honest, even running them in full auto is more important to them than what the actual image quality looks like. And for that sort of customer, camcorders are the best way to go unless you want to go for a big sort of broadcast camera. And so there's a huge demand still for those cameras. It's not as big as it used to be, but it is still sizable. And the XF400 is not a very old camera at all. I would be quite surprised if Canon didn't ever release another camcorder. I mean, XF400 is relatively recent, XF705 is about relatively recent, and the XA50 and 55 is also very recent. All of these have been released within the last year or so. In terms of a Mark II, I'm not sure there's much that they'd need to add to them right now. I'd like to see a Mark II of the 705 that gets away from some of the HEVC side of it, or just an update to the 705 to add some more XFAVC support rather than just the H.265 that's in that camera. But down at the sort of middle and lower end of their camcorder lineup, there's not a huge amount that I'd change on those cameras right now. I think they're quite well-spec'd cameras, and they're certainly very practical to use. So if you're looking at buying a XF400, personally, I'd just go for it. But if it's not hitting the what you need right now, let me know. Put it in the chat. We can always feed it back to Canon, or you can recommend something else for you. Okay, so Alexander, anything about the R5 overheating issues, and what's your thoughts for the next few weeks' announcements from Canon? So just to touch on that last point, next week's announcement from Canon, so they've got a stream on the 24th. I can't remember what it's called now. It's called the Vision stream or something like that, I think. They have teased that there's a new Cinema Eos camera coming, and we have got a stream the day after, like we did with the R5 launch and the C300 launch, streams like that. So you will know all about anything that might be coming at that event very, very soon. The way that all of these camera launches happen, because obviously being a dealer and producing videos like this, we do get access to things before they're released. So, for example, what happened with the previous launches, like the C300 Mark III, for example, or the R5, we were told about it beforehand. We signed embargoes and NDAs to mean that we can't talk about anything at all. And then as soon as that embargo date lifts, we can talk about it as much as possible. So if we did know anything right now, we would be under an NDA and not be able to talk to you. And if we didn't know anything right now, we wouldn't know anything right now, so we wouldn't be able to talk to you. So it's pretty much all I can say on that. I don't want to go into too much speculation on it, but you guys feel free. Let me know. Actually, that'd be really interesting. I would be very interested in seeing what you think might be coming in there, what you think the specs are, what you think the price is, what you think the level of camera might be. You know, is this going to be the new flagship top end? Is this going to be the new entry level bottom end? Is it going to replace a current camera? You know, what are your thoughts? What would you like to see? What do you think they're going to do and isn't what you'd like to see? Let me know. About the R5 overheating issues. Now, this has been the big talk of the industry, really, for the last month since the R5 release. I think it is... There isn't really anyone out there, including Canon themselves and the most prolific Canon users, that isn't a little bit disappointed at some of the overheating stuff in the cameras. I do think that the internet collective, if you like, is... there are some people that are blowing it out of proportion. There are some people that aren't. It is a very serious issue, though, and we tried not to shy away from it too much in talking to customers and on this channel, because we want customers always to be making the informed choices. I've never been one to try and shy away from or hide cameras' flaws. If anything, I embrace cameras' flaws and spend more time talking about that than their positives sometimes. I get criticised for. And that the reason for that is sometimes when you're trying to choose which camera is right for you, trying to figure out what the cameras aren't and what the cameras are weak at is the best way to do that. So take, for example, the R5 with its overheating issues, and the A7S Mark III, because those are the two rivals right now. They're the two big cameras. And if you want to be able to shoot continuously for an entire day, so say you're doing a wedding, for example, on the R5, you are going to be limited to that line skip 4K. And on the A7S Mark III, you're going to be able to do whatever you want. Really? I mean, some people have said that there's some overheating. We haven't seen any. None of our customers have seen any. So personally, here in the UK, I don't think that's a camera that is going to overheat at all. And so you can whack it into 4K 120p. You can put it into 4K 60. You can do whatever you want with that camera. You can shoot in the highest quality modes possible on it, and you'll be fine. You can't do that with the R5. And yes, those quality modes are higher. The 8K, for example, 4K HQ, unbelievably good mode. The 4K 120, it's a bit disappointing that it can't do it without overheating, while the A7S Mark III can. But really, you're in that normal 4K mode. And so if that's what you need to be able to shoot video all day, you've got to know about those overheating issues, because that is going to dictate which camera you go for, and you might well end up going for the A7S Mark III. But the counter argument to that is if you do any stills. Because if you do any stills on the A7S Mark III, they're going to be lovely stills. It's not like it takes bad photos, but they are going to be 12 megapixels. Whereas the R5 is pretty much the best stills camera I think Canon have ever made. I mean, it shoots at frame rates like a 1DX, and it's got high resolution like a RS5SR. You know, it ticks every box. It shoots super high resolution pixels really, really quickly, and the pictures look incredible. So if you do stills, that is a real powerhouse. And so, in my opinion, if you do stills, it's worth putting up with some of those overheating issues in the video mode to go for that hybrid camera. So it's not as simple as, oh, well, the R5 overheats and the A7S doesn't, so why would you ever buy the R5? Always go for the A7S Mark III. For some people, it is that simple, but for the majority of people, I don't think it is. And so thoughts on the R5 overheating issues is a difficult one, because for some people, it is going to be a deal breaker, and for some people, they just don't care. And so it's hard to sum up to an entire collective audience whether or not that's a big issue. All we've tried to do is be transparent about it. And I think to give credit to Canon, they have also tried to be transparent about it. We all knew about these R5 issues right at launch because Canon themselves were saying. In fact, I actually, at the launch, we did our live stream the day after, and I hadn't personally realized the extent of the overheating issues. I hadn't realized that the R6 had overheating issues, and I hadn't realized the extent of the R5's overheating issues. And it was actually media from Canon that told me, no, this is what we've published. This is what the camera can do. So yes, some of the marketing was a little bit weird before launch in terms of that they were shying away from that because they were trying to generate hype. But they have actually been very, very transparent with it to give them a little bit of credit there. But yeah, for a lot of people, it is going to be a big issue. Alpha 6668 says Sony FX6 full frame or APS-C. Super interesting. I don't know anything. I mean, the same rule from what I just said previously with the Canon launch. If we knew something, we'd be under an NDA. If we didn't know anything, we wouldn't be able to say anything. And I will actually say on the FX6, I don't know anything. Hopefully I will know something very soon, but right now I don't. And so, yeah, again, I don't want to go into too much speculation, but full frame or APS-C is an interesting one because it's the FX6, and they introduced the FX9 so that it would be a full frame version of their FS7. So if it's not full frame, what differentiates it from the FS line? Is it high resolution? Maybe it's the 6K downsampling down to 4K. That's what makes it an FX. So maybe it's a Super 35 camera that does 6K sensor downsampled to 4K, like the FX9 does with a large format sensor. Maybe that's what makes it an FX camera rather than an FS camera. Or is it the full frame bit? I'm not sure. That will be very interesting to find out. But I think the FX6 could be a really interesting camera. It's going to be very interesting to see how they straddle between the A7S Mark III, which is incredibly feature-rich, and the FX9. How they meet the middle ground between those is going to be interesting to see. Okay, Chris, very happy A7 Mini Pro ISO user. Been live streaming at our church using our G9 and G7, but looking to buy new cameras. Thoughts on the Pocket 4K versus a camcorder for ease of use with volunteers? If it's about ease of use, I would always go camcorder. It is as simple as that. You can flick a camcorder into auto, they can zoom in and out. If they've never touched a camera before, they're not going to be intimidated. And if they are intimidated, at least they'll get half-decent results. If you give a Pocket 4K to somebody who has never used a camera before and they're intimidated by it, they're going to mess it up. You know, you've got to manually focus it. You've got to manually expose it. They are incredible cameras for image quality. And particularly with the A7 Mini Pro, it's great that you get full camera control over a HDMI cable. Incredible innovation from Blackmagic. But yeah, if you're looking purely for ease of use for volunteers, personally, I'd always go camcorder on that. Andrea, we're considering buying a Super 35mm camera for broadcast use. You're the Italian national TV. Simply ask for that requirement. Okay. Options you're considering are C300 Mark II, FS7 Mark I, FS5 C100. What would you suggest for reportage-style shooting, simple post-production, fast rhythms? Okay, so very fast-paced reportage-style TV production. I wouldn't go for the FS5 or the C100, although they are fantastic cameras for that because they are so lightweight. Their internal codecs don't meet most broadcaster specs. The FS7 has been by far the most widely used camera for that sort of work. You know, if you take it, I bet if you asked a survey of people doing that sort of work, what camera have you been using for the last 3 years? You know, 80% of them would say FS7. It's been unbelievably popular. C300 Mark III, C300 Mark II is a very, very good camera, particularly for the price that you can get one now. A used one is only, I think it's £5,000 or £6,000. It's incredibly low for a camera of that quality. It's what I'm actually being filmed on right now. For that sort of work, it doesn't go on a shoulder and it's a little bit bulky. It's bulkier than their newer cameras like the C200 and the C300 Mark III and the C500 Mark II. So I think my recommendation there would be FS7. I'll try and go for the Mark II if you can, though, rather than the Mark I. The Mark II added things like the variable ND, added a stronger lens mount on the front, and much better ergonomics with things like, sometimes on the Mark I, the viewfinder drooped down, things like that, which the Mark II fixed. And I would also look at buying new, because buying used cameras that have been that popular, you've got to be so careful because a lot of them have been workhorses and will go through. So if you're buying used, I'd buy from a recommended retailer like us. I would really recommend people buy new, though, even though they are sort of older cameras, if you like. Okay. Right, JDM hopes that the FX6 is just an A7S Mark III in a nice box. I mean, how good a camera would that be? Take literally the A7S Mark III, take that sensor, take the exact same codecs, exact same record options, 2 SD cards, and just put it in that body that we've seen in the photo of the FX6. You know, variable NDs, proper ergonomics for video. How good a camera would that be? It would be brilliant. It would be very interesting to see how that leaves the FX9, though, because a lot of the reasons that people go for the FX9 is the ergonomics of it rather than the record formats. And so that might leave a lot of customers annoyed, but maybe they'd do it. I mean, I sort of hope they do that, because what a good camera that would be. That would be incredible. John is saying it would be great for the FX6 to be in a nice box. Yep, not sure it will be. From the videos I've watched, even the FX9 isn't an A7S Mark III. Yes, the A7S Mark III on paper does a bunch of things that the FX9 doesn't, but you've got to remember it's about slightly more than that. The codecs are differently, and it's full-blown XAVCI rather than XAVCSI, and we haven't seen the details as to what the differences are there yet. It's also a camera that is designed by their cinema team. So it will be very interesting to see what the picture quality differences are, what the dynamic range differences are, because, I mean, the A7S Mark III is remarkable. Like, I don't want to just brush the A7S Mark III with the same brush as every other mirrorless camera for the last 5 years, because it isn't. It is remarkably good, that camera. The dynamic range looks brilliant, the image quality looks brilliant, the picture looks brilliant, the detail, the codecs in it, it just seems to tick all the boxes. And so really, what are you paying for an FX9 for? It's the ergonomics. You know, if you need an FX9 for your work, the A7S Mark III isn't an option. If you need that speed that comes from having physical buttons on there, the variable ND, the proper XLRs, a chunkier camera which you can put on your shoulder, and it goes more than just that, just even the button layout and which buttons go for what. It's not designed for stills. The A7S Mark III is still in a body style that is designed for stills. And so yes, because we've all used mirrorless cameras such a lot now for video, we've got used to that. But the FX9 is built from the ground up for video. So, you know, there's a button for waveforms, there's a button for the status page, all that sort of stuff, which does speed you up a huge amount on a professional shoot. And so for a lot of people, yeah, the A7S Mark III is never going to tick the same boxes simply because of its body style. But yeah, the FX6 could be interesting. Sinbad OK is replying to Andrea about the camera for fractal TV. Don't buy an FS7 Mark I. You'd be missing out on the variable ND, which is one of the best features of the FS7 Mark II and the FS5. I completely agree. I have an FS5 Mark II, and I think it'd be a great fit for you. Yes, but you'd be stuck with XAVC-L with an FS5 Mark II. The XAVC-I on the FS7 Mark II is so industry standard now. You know, you put that to any broadcaster anywhere in the world, they are going to know what that format is. They're going to expect it. They're going to know it meets their specifications. I personally think it's worth going for the one-up for the FS7 Mark II if you're doing broadcast work specifically. Okay, AJ, what do you think of the Lumix S5 versus the GH5S? So not the GH5, the GH5S. It doesn't seem much of an upgrade apart from full frame. Yep, that's fair. I mean, it is the entry-level full frame camera. So you can debate till the cows come home which size of sensor is better for video, and you will find a bunch of people that insist that a smaller sensor is all they need. In fact, it's all they want, and those people are absolutely right, you know, for a lot of reasons. It is very, very subjective. Personally, I like full frame sensors. I've always found, whether it's a casual photo of my cat at home or whether it's proper paid professional work, I've always got better results when I've been holding a full frame camera, whether that's a big video camera or whether that's a small stills camera, than I have when I've been holding a smaller than Super 35 camera. So micro four thirds, like the GH5S. So for me, the full frame sensor alone is worth it. On top of that, I would be very interested. I haven't done any image side-by-sides next to each other yet, but I think the difference will be bigger than you think it is in terms of low light and stuff like that. The GH5S did very well, but it got very, very sort of, you could see the noise reduction very quickly on that camera. So yes, it could shoot up at very high ISOs very well, but it didn't look quite as good as the A7S Mark II did, for example, or the A7 Mark III from Sony, because they were full frame. And yes, they were doing the same trick, applying loads of noise reduction, but they did look a lot better. And the S5, I think, is nearing more to... I don't think it's as good as the A7S lineup, but I think it is better than the GH5S in terms of gut feelings on that. But again, I haven't done the side-by-sides. So I think the low light is going to be better. And of course, the other big thing there is the stabilized sensor. The convenience of having a stabilized sensor when you're filming. If you do any sort of handheld work, or if you shoot run and gun with it up to your eye, sort of like a press photographer, so photographer style. If you shoot like that, the image stabilization that the normal GH5 had on the GH5S and now this S5 has is so worth it. When the S1 came out, my big sort of talking point on that camera was, is this now a GH5 and a GH5S merged? Is this the best of both worlds with a full frame sensor as a nice upgrade? And yes, it was, but it came with a much bigger body and it came with a higher price tag. So really this S5 for me is that same camera. It's the GH5S, the GH5, all the strengths of both cameras smushed together into one camera, and with a full frame sensor as a cherry on the top of the cake. And so personally, the S5 is a more appealing buy to me than either the GH5 or the GH5S or the S1. Then the S1H is a completely different beast. That's the flagship, particularly once the firmware comes out for that one. That's going to be a really nice camera. Okay, Sinbad is saying, you're right about XAVC-L, Carl. That and no 10-bit 4K are the major downsides of the FS5 Mark II. Hope to replace with the FX6 to fix that. Yes, interesting, because we've seen now the A7 line move away from long up to go towards XAVC-SI. Are we going to see if the FX6 was only long up, that would leave it at a big disadvantage compared to the A7S Mark III, which would be very interesting. So hopefully it will be intraframe and 10-bit 4K. But then what is missing from the FX9? It will be very interesting to see what that camera's like. I'm looking forward to that immensely. James Bridges, anything new on wireless video assist with SDI? So by video assist, do you mean Blackmagic's lineup of monitors, the video assists? Or do you just mean a video assist as in terms of the traditional term, so wireless video? If it's anything new on just wireless video as a whole, James, Teradek have just launched their Bolt 4K. So if you, Dan, if you pop over to my laptop, and we released a video on these as well. These are the new Teradek Bolts. So they've completely replaced the Bolt lineup. So Teradek's lineup is now the Ace, the Bolt 4K LTs, and the Bolt 4Ks up at the high end. And these look really nice. They've added so many good features to this. They even just the body style of them, they're so nice and small and compact. And of course, they brought zero latency, or effectively zero latency. It's not zero latency, but it's 0.001 frames a second in the right circumstances. So it's as close to zero delay wireless video as you can get realistically. And they brought that to 4K over HDMI and better 10-bit HDR 1080p video as well. And then the iOS app to join them all together. So if you just need wireless video, that is brilliant. Those things. I also would point you towards the Swit. If that's too high a price range, Swit do the Curve, which is their HDMI only one, which is this one, and then they do the Flow as well, which is the SDI. They do a Flow 500 and a Flow 2000. And these are sort of Swit's version of the Teradeks, if you like. They aren't Wi-Fi, so they're a big step up from things like Holyland, for example, which are very popular, affordable options as well. They don't quite have the zero latency that the Teradeks do, and that's where you're saving. That's where you're saving your money compared to the Teradeks. But they're half the price of the competing Teradeks. And so they are so worth it, in my opinion. These are a really good middle ground for wireless video. James, Teradek style. So yes, there you go. There's your answer. If you've got the budget, those new Teradek 4K LTs look amazing. If you don't have the budget, Swit are doing some really nice stuff at the moment. Those Curves are such a good price. I mean, £449 ex-VAT is a ridiculously good price for wireless video that's as reliable as that. Okay. Jose says, what sort of features would you like to be added via firmware to the Canon R5? To be honest, the more they can do to the overheating issues, the better over firmware. I don't think Canon are going to do too much. It's not really Canon's style to add big new features over firmware updates. If they do that, it's normally something where they go, "Ooh, whoops, we should have put that in from day one." So there's been some rumours of them adding more codecs to the R6, that sort of thing. Something like that where they go, actually, you guys are right, we probably should have added that. they might do that, but for the most part, Canon developed those cameras for such a long time that they normally know what the camera is that they want to release. They release it, then they just do firmware fixes and bug fixes and things like that, and then until their next camera, which they're developing. So it's not really their style to add big new features via firmware. The biggest things that I would like to be added to it is obviously any reduction that they can do on overheating, like the one that they've just done in their latest firmware update, is so welcome. They're never going to get it to a camera that doesn't overheat at all. It's not designed for that. It's a weather sealed small thing like that. It's never going to not overheat, but anything they can do to speed up the recovery once it does overheat and give you more recording time before it overheats is very, very welcome. The other big thing that I think that camera is missing is dual card slot support. So on the R5, on the R6, you can't do dual card slot recording at all, although it's got 2 SD cards. For video, you can in stills. For the R5, you can only do it as a proxy recording when you're doing 8K, or when you're recording internally or when you're recording externally. It is not what I would class as proper redundancy recording, where you can record the exact same thing to both card slots so that if one card corrupts on you, you've got the other one as a backup. Or even just what I would love to see is some sort of a usable proxy. So no matter what, say you, because it's got 2 card slots, right? It's got CF Express and then SD cards. If you could record whatever you want to the CF Express card slot, so 8K RAW, 120 frames a second, 4K HQ mode, whatever you want to do over to there, as you normally would, but then also record a decent quality 1080p version of that same thing to the SD card, so that if your CF card corrupts, which all media can possibly do at some point, then you've got something that is professional quality enough to finish your project. Because it's all about, okay, I'm in the middle of a job for a client, my card's corrupted. What do I do? So hopefully I haven't lost anything because it's a card that's already been backed up. And then if that is the case and I have lost things, hopefully I can reshoot. If it's something which you can't reshoot, go, okay, how can I rescue this situation? And if you've got a 1080p file, you go, right, okay, I'll just drop the quality down of this project. I'll maybe apologize to the customer. I'll make a client. Maybe I'll give them some money back, something like that. But at least I'll be able to deliver a project to them. Whereas if it's you've got nothing, then you've got nothing. So, you know, you've got to not only refund your client, but then also massively impact your relationship with that client. And hopefully they can see that it's not your fault. These things happen. But you know, it is a business problem, whichever way you look at it. So dual card slots recording is always good for professional work. And so, yeah, I would love to see something there for the R5 for video. You know, why can't it do the normal 4K mode to both card slots at the same time? I assume it's heat, but that is a real shame on that camera. Okay, C300 Mark III with a B4 lens. So Simon, I get this comment from customers quite a lot as to B4 lenses, and most of the time it is simply because so sometimes it's because people can't find the lens that exists with the for a Super 35 sensor or a large format with the same focal length, which is fine. They don't exist, and if they do, they're incredibly expensive, like the CN7 or CX10 or CN10 or something like that. The other half of the time, it's just that they don't want to buy new lenses and they want to use the B4s. For both camps of that, I really don't recommend using B4 lenses on large sensor cameras. For the one thing, most B4 lenses, unless they're the really modern ones, do not have the resolving power to record proper 4K, let alone the higher resolutions. And also most of them are designed for smaller sensors, so a lot of them don't even cover the Super 35 sensor in the C300 Mark III. So I think there is a B4 mount for the C300 Mark III, or at least an adapter that they can do, but I really wouldn't recommend it. I would look at lenses like the 18-80 from Canon, if you can, for the C300 Mark III. That is a really good lens which replicates a little bit, gives you a servo zoom and gives you a decent zoom range between 18 and 80. So that replicates a little bit. Here, let me find it on the website. 18 to 80. Okay, so it's this lens. I mean, it's relatively sort of affordable in terms of B4 lens capabilities and compared to something like the CA7, but I mean, obviously it's not a cheap lens by any stretch of the imagination. But this and its partner, the 70-200, really replicate a lot of what people are used to from a B4 lens, but they are properly designed for a super 35mm sensor. So they cover the whole sensor, they're sharp as anything, and they've got autofocus, which is another massive thing. Because if you're buying a camera like a C300 Mark III, where the autofocus is that good, you want to be able to use it. You want to be able to do a piece of camera and just track someone's face, because it makes such a lot of difference. It really, really does. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, so James Bridges, any word if Fujinon is going to come up with an affordable full-frame zoom option for the FX9? That would be great, wouldn't it? I mean, they already sort of do some. So they do, whether or not they're going to do anything full-frame, I don't know. I mean, they've got the Premistas, just less optically good Premista, maybe. They've got some good Super 35 options. So they've obviously got the MKs, but they've also got, what is the Fujinon? Is it the MX? Can't remember what it's called now, but it's the one step up from the MKs. If anyone can remember what that's called. Yeah, Sinbad is saying, I own a set of Fujinon MKs, which I love, but wondering how well they will work with the FX9 Super 35 crop mode if I was to upgrade. Okay, they work really well. I mean, obviously you're paying for a whole bit of the camera which you're not going to use with a full frame, but I do genuinely think the FX9 in Super 35 crop mode for most people is a better camera than the FS7 Mark II. It's got better low light, it's got better image quality. It's a lovely, lovely camera. You miss out on some things like some high frame rate support and stuff like that. And the center scan crop mode thing. Although I think that might have been added in the newest firmware. Yeah. Okay. Complete Films. One of the main reasons he didn't buy the R6 with the overheating and the dual card slots. Yeah, absolutely. It's a big deal for a lot of people. James Bridges, external recorders can save the day sometimes. Absolutely. But also external recorders add a lot of weight. Okay, my colleague Dan has just clarified it's being added in version 3.0. So it's not in this firmware update, the center scan mode for the FX9. That's in the next firmware update. So I think that's coming before the end of the year or early next year. I'm not sure. Maybe they haven't actually said that. But in the next one. But yeah, I think you'll be very, very happy with an FX9 over the FS7 with your Fujinon MKs. Okay, Sinbad, he thinks he'll be missing out on autofocus. Yep, absolutely. Considering something like the 28-135 f4 for upcoming Cine style, 16-35, depending on the price. I think they'll be quite expensive, those lenses. Full frame E-mount zoom. No, most people are just using a stills lens, something like a 24-70 G Master. And if they do need servo, then they're using that 28-135, which is a very nice lens. It's not perfect at all. It's not as good, I don't think, optically as the Fuji MKs, but you get autofocus and you get proper servo. So they're, to be honest, bang for buck on those lenses, the 28-135s f4s, absolutely fantastic. Okay, James, last question from him. Could you do a test with the Blackmagic Video Assist recorder and the FX9, both 5-inch and 7-inch models? They're interesting pairs with the FX9. I don't know whether they're going to be able to see the new RAW from the XDCA back or not. That might be just an Atomos thing for the moment. But for the most part, they will work the same as they do with any other camera in terms of they'll be able to record the HDMI or the SDI into ProRes. I'm pretty sure that the RAW out is only Atomos. I don't think Blackmagic have got that working yet with Blackmagic RAW, so it's only Atomos recording to ProRes RAW as the RAW format. So Johnny Lewis is saying, have you guys considered doing an audio podcast? Yes, we have. It's something I'm actually toying with the idea of starting pretty soon. I'm thinking of getting a few guests in to do sort of regular chats. I'm thinking of maybe doing this as sort of a regular series where it's just general chatting questions on the recent comments on the videos, and maybe monthly on this and then monthly on a podcast where it's chatting with industry people, people like Philip Bloom, Ollie Kenchington, Alistair Chapman, people like that we normally speak to, but more as a group rather than one-on-one with a subject like the live streams normally are. And then having that as maybe a live stream, but maybe just an audio podcast, or maybe it's a big video podcast which people can watch on YouTube after the fact rather than doing it live, which might be easier for us to actually pull off and produce. But the audio only podcast is a really good bit because a lot of people in this industry listen to things in cars. And so having something which you can just listen to rather than watch, I love listening to podcasts like that. And I think it would be a very interesting thing for us to do. So yes, we are definitely looking at that. If you have any ideas for what you would like us to do with it, please do let me know. So we'll do this as the last question before we wrap up for the day, I think. But the last one is, are you going to test and review the Red Comodo in the future? I'm looking forward to this camera. Yes, we are all looking forward to that camera. I think it's going to be a really nice little camera. But I'm not going to lie to you, the launch has been a little bit weird from Red in that lots of people already have the beta versions. So Jared, the CEO, is tweeting about it and Instagramming about it all over the place, and it's all over Red User with loads of details, and yet officially the camera doesn't exist. It's not on Red's website, so officially we can't do anything. So it's a rather interesting launch from them. But yes, I think it could be a really interesting camera. I wouldn't expect it to be around very quickly in large numbers. I think it will be one of these things that will trickle out into the market over the next 6 months to a year. I don't think Red are going to be able to do what a lot of other camera manufacturers have done and go, right, here's the launch. We've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds arriving for people to have. I just, from what I've seen of their launch so far, I don't think that's going to be the case. But who knows? It's all up in the air until they officially announce it. We don't know yet, really. But yeah, once it is available, I will absolutely be doing a tests and reviews on it because I think it's really interesting. Okay, great news about the podcast. Lovely stuff. Okay, so thank you all so much for watching. I think that was an interesting experiment. We went on for longer than I thought we were going to do, which is good. So thank you all so much for leaving some good questions and some comments there. Hopefully that was useful to people. Let me know. We'll keep this live chat going for another sort of 5-10 minutes after the camera shuts off. Well, we'll sort of play the product videos there. So please do let me know what you think of this little experiment as a live stream. Is this something you would watch regularly? I'd love to get a little regular sort of community going where once a month or once a week, maybe if there's enough demand, we do a stream like this at the same time. And people can jump in and we can chat. I think that would be great to do. So yeah, something a little bit different. But thank you all so much for watching. If you want to order any of the products we've talked about or any of the incredibly exciting new releases that we've seen over the last month or so, ProAV is the place to do it. Just head over to the website or give our sales guys a call and they'll be able to help you out. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you soon.
XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd. The MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile all-round shotgun microphones on the market.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd.